Mother bear faces a hunter's trap, but a crawling infant. Change the ending in one unthinkable move. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the forest floor as Lily Morgan stepped onto her cabin porch, cradling her 10-month-old daughter Emma in her arms. The baby cooed softly, reaching for a butterfly that fluttered past them, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look at that, sweetheart," Lily whispered, smiling as Emma's tiny fingers grasped at the air. Nature's little miracle. The cabin stood alone in a small clearing, surrounded by towering pines and ancient oaks that swayed gently in the breeze. Lily had moved here 3 months ago, seeking solace after her husband's unexpected passing. The forest had become their sanctuary, a place to heal and find peace away from pitying glances and well-meaning but painful condolences. Behind the cabin, a stream bubbled cheerfully, its crystal waters winding through moss-covered rocks. It was there that Lily had first spotted the mother bear and her 2 cubs drinking at dawn one misty morning. She had frozen in place, heart hammering in her chest. But the bear had merely looked up, acknowledging her presence before calmly leading her cubs back into the shelter of the trees. Since then, Lily had glimpsed the bear family several times, always keeping a respectful distance. There was something comforting about their presence, a reminder that life continued its cycles regardless of human grief. "Let's water the garden," Lily said, carrying Emma to the small vegetable patch they had planted together. She set the baby down on a soft blanket under the shade of a young maple tree, surrounding her with wooden toys carved by Lily's late husband. Emma babbled happily, gnawing on a smooth wooden rabbit, while Lily filled her watering can at the outdoor pump. The peaceful scene was suddenly shattered by a distant metallic snap, followed by an agonized roar that echoed through the trees. Lily froze, the watering can slipping from her fingers. She knew that sound, a trap, and from the pained roar she knew exactly who had been caught. "Oh no," she whispered, rushing to scoop up Emma. But as she turned, she realized with a jolt of panic that the blanket was empty. The wooden toys lay scattered, and Emma was gone. A high-pitched giggle drifted from the edge of the clearing. With her heart in her throat, Lily spun around to see tiny handprints in the dirt leading toward the forest, toward the source of that terrible roar. "Emma!" Lily screamed, breaking into a run. "Emma!" But the forest had already swallowed her baby, and in the distance, another roar, weaker this time, sent birds scattering into the sky. In that moment, Lily felt a fear unlike any she had known before. Not the dull ache of grief that had followed her husband's death, but a sharp, primal terror that clawed at her insides. Her feet pounded against the earth as she followed the tiny handprints, branches whipping against her face and arms. "Please," she prayed to no one in particular. "Please keep her safe." The forest grew denser as she ran, sunlight filtering through the canopy in scattered patches. The handprints disappeared into the undergrowth, but Lily could still hear Emma's occasional giggles guiding her forward, mixed with the low, rumbling growls that grew louder with each step. She pushed through a thick curtain of ferns and stopped dead in her tracks. There, in a small clearing, lay the mother bear, her massive paw caught in the cruel metal jaws of a trap. Blood darkened the fur around the wound, and the bear's eyes were glazed with pain. Her cubs huddled nearby, whimpering softly. And there, just feet away from the trapped animal, sat Emma. The baby girl had crawled right up to the injured bear and was sitting contentedly in the dirt, babbling and reaching out a chubby hand toward one of the frightened cubs. Lily couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Time seemed to stand still as her daughter, her tiny, defenseless daughter, reached toward a wild bear cub while its wounded mother watched with dark, pain-filled eyes. "Emma," Lily whispered, afraid to make any sudden movements. "Emma, baby, don't move." At the sound of her mother's voice, Emma turned her head and smiled, revealing 2 tiny bottom teeth. She pointed excitedly at the bear cubs and babbled something incomprehensible. The mother bear's eyes shifted to Lily, and a low growl rumbled in her throat. But it wasn't a threat, it was a plea. Despite the pain and fear, there was something unmistakably maternal in that gaze, something Lily recognized deep in her soul. 2 mothers, worlds apart, connected by the fiercest love nature could create. Before Lily could decide what to do, a twig snapped in the distance. The bear's head jerked up, nostrils flaring. Lily tensed, her instincts screaming at her to grab Emma and run. But she knew any sudden movement might provoke the injured animal. Through the trees, a figure emerged. A man dressed in camouflage, a rifle balanced casually against his shoulder. His eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. The trapped bear, the frightened cubs, the baby girl sitting in the dirt, and Lily frozen in place at the edge of the clearing. "What the hell?" he muttered, raising his rifle instinctively. "Don't!" Lily cried, finding her voice at last. "Please don't shoot. My daughter." The hunter, for that's clearly what he was, looked from Lily to Emma with disbelief. "Lady, that's a wild bear. Get your kid out of there." "I can't move suddenly," Lily explained, her voice trembling. "Please, just lower your gun." The hunter hesitated, his finger hovering near the trigger. "That bear's worth a lot. Good pelt, good meat." Lily felt sick. "She has cubs," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "And she's never bothered anyone. Someone set a trap on my property." "Not my trap," the hunter said defensively. "But a bear's a bear." While they spoke, Emma had turned her attention back to the cubs. To everyone's amazement, one of them had crept cautiously toward her, drawn by childish curiosity that mirrored Emma's own. As the adults watched in disbelief, Emma and the bear cub touched noses, the baby giggling delightedly at the contact. The mother bear made no move to attack. Instead, she lay still, watching the interaction with what could only be described as cautious tolerance. The hunter lowered his rifle slightly, confusion evident on his face. "I've never seen anything like that." Emma, oblivious to the tension around her, reached out and gently patted the cub's head. The gesture was so tender, so innocent, that it seemed to change the very air in the clearing. Lily took a careful step forward. "The trap," she said quietly, nodding toward the bear's injured paw. "We need to release her." The hunter stared at her as if she'd lost her mind. "You want to get close enough to free it? That's suicide." "Look at her," Lily insisted. "She's in pain, but she hasn't harmed my baby. She could have, but she didn't." As if understanding their conversation, the mother bear's eyes moved from Lily to the hunter, then to the trap that held her captive. She made a soft sound, almost a whimper, that tugged at Lily's heart. The hunter shook his head slowly. "This is crazy," he muttered. But after a moment he carefully set his rifle against a tree and reached into his pocket, pulling out a pair of heavy gloves. "I've released these before," he said reluctantly. "But if she makes one wrong move—" Lily nodded, understanding the unspoken threat. Carefully, she inched forward and knelt beside Emma, ready to snatch her away at the first sign of danger. The hunter approached cautiously from the other side, his movements slow and deliberate. The bear watched him warily but remained still, as if she somehow understood his intentions. "Easy now," the hunter murmured, kneeling beside the trap. Easy, Mama. With practiced hands, he manipulated the mechanism of the trap. There was a loud click, and the metal jaws sprang open, releasing the bear's injured paw. For a moment, no one moved. The bear looked down at her freed limb, then back at the humans. She made no attempt to stand, perhaps too weak from pain and blood loss. Emma chose that moment to crawl toward the mother bear, her little hands reaching for the animal's injured paw. "Emma, no!" Lily gasped, lunging forward. But before she could reach her daughter, something extraordinary happened. The mother bear gently, oh so gently, extended her uninjured paw and placed it between Emma and her wound, as if to say, "Not there, little one, that hurts." Emma patted the offered paw instead, completely unafraid. The hunter stood transfixed, his weathered face softening at the sight. "I've hunted these woods for 30 years, he said quietly. "Never seen anything like this." Lily felt tears slide down her cheeks. "She's protecting her cubs," she said. "Just like I'd protect mine." The mother bear began to struggle to her feet, clearly wanting to leave now that she was free. Her injured paw barely touched the ground as she limped toward her cubs, gathering them close. Lily scooped Emma into her arms, holding her tight. The baby waved cheerfully at the departing bears, oblivious to the miracle that had just unfolded. Before disappearing into the trees, the mother bear paused and looked back, her dark eyes meeting Lily's one last time. There was something in that gaze, something profound and ancient and wise that Lily knew she would never forget. Then the bear family was gone, vanishing into the depths of the forest that was their home. The hunter cleared his throat awkwardly, breaking the spell. "You should get that little one home," he said, nodding at Emma, who was still trying to squirm out of her mother's arms to follow the bears. "Yes," Lily agreed, blinking away tears. "Thank you for helping." The hunter picked up his rifle but didn't place it back on his shoulder. Instead, he held it awkwardly at his side, as if unsure what to do with it. "Name's Connor," he said after a moment. "Connor Adams. I live about 5 miles east of here." "Lily Morgan," she replied. "And this is Emma." Connor nodded, looking thoughtful. "Those traps are illegal on private property," he said. "I could help you check for more if you want." Lily hesitated, studying the man who had been ready to shoot the mother bear just minutes ago. Something had changed in him. She could see it in his eyes, the way he held himself. "I'd appreciate that," she said finally. "I don't want any more animals hurt on my land." As they walked back toward the cabin, Emma babbling happily in Lily's arms, Connor glanced back at the clearing one last time. "That bear," he said quietly. "She knew, didn't she? She knew your little girl wasn't a threat." Lily nodded, remembering the look in the mother bear's eyes. "I think she recognized something in Emma," she said. "Innocence, maybe, or trust." Connor fell silent, lost in thought. But as they reached the edge of Lily's garden, he suddenly stopped and unloaded his rifle, pocketing the bullets. "Think I'll leave the hunting to others for a while," he said, offering no further explanation. Lily smiled, understanding what he couldn't quite put into words. They had witnessed something today that defied explanation, a moment of connection across species, a bridge built by a child too young to know fear. As Emma reached for the butterfly that had returned to dance in the sunlight, Lily knew that her daughter had taught them all a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Some barriers, it seemed, existed only in the minds of adults. 2 weeks passed since the encounter in the forest. The cuts on Lily's arms from the branches had healed, but the memory remained as vivid as ever. She often found herself staring into the tree line, wondering about the mother bear and her cubs, hoping the injured paw was healing. Connor had been true to his word. He'd helped her locate and remove 3 more traps hidden on her property, his expertise proving invaluable. They'd worked in comfortable silence most days, breaking it only when necessary. But Lily had noticed something different about him with each visit, a softening around his eyes, a gentleness that hadn't been there when she first met him. "Found anything?" Lily called one afternoon, carrying Emma on her hip as she approached Connor, who was kneeling by the stream. He shook his head, standing up and brushing dirt from his knees. "Think we got them all. Whoever set these traps won't be coming back." Emma babbled excitedly when she saw Connor, reaching out her arms to him. After a moment's hesitation, he took her awkwardly, holding her as if she might break. "She likes you," Lily observed, smiling. Connor's weathered face creased into a rare smile. "Got a good judge of character here," he said, tickling Emma gently under her chin. The baby squealed with delight. "I made lunch," Lily said, nodding toward the cabin. "Nothing fancy, just sandwiches." Connor hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Don't want to impose. It's just lunch," Lily assured him. "A thank you for helping with the traps." He followed her back to the cabin, still carrying Emma, who had become fascinated with the buttons on his shirt. Inside, Lily noticed how his eyes swept the small space, taking in the details of her life. The faded photographs on the mantel, the half-finished painting on an easel by the window, the wooden toys scattered across the rug. "Your husband?" Connor asked, nodding toward one of the photographs. Lily nodded, setting plates on the table. "Michael, he died last year, car accident." Connor's expression softened. "I'm sorry." "Me too." Lily handed him a sandwich. "How about you?" "Family. Not anymore." He set Emma down gently and took the plate. "Ah, had a wife once, long time ago, and a daughter." Lily waited, sensing there was more to the story but not wanting to pry. "Lost them," Connor continued after a long moment, his voice rough. "Cabin fire. I was away hunting, came back to ashes." Lily's heart twisted. "Connor, I'm so sorry." He shrugged, but the grief in his eyes was bottomless. "Been 20 years now. You learn to live with it." "Is that why you hunt?" Lily asked quietly. "To stay away?" Connor looked surprised by the question. "Never thought about it that way." He took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. "Maybe. Being in the woods, it's simpler." They ate in silence for a while, Emma crawling between them, playing with a wooden spoon Lily had given her. "My Sarah would be about your age now," Connor said suddenly, watching Emma. "Hard to believe." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. Before she could respond, a sound from outside made them both freeze, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot, followed by another. Connor was on his feet instantly, his expression darkening. "Poachers," he muttered. "Too close to the cabin." Lily scooped up Emma, her heart racing. "The bears?" "Could be." Connor grabbed his own unloaded rifle from where it leaned against the wall. "Stay here." "No," Lily said firmly. "This is my land. I'm coming with you." Connor looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment he nodded. "Keep the little one close." They stepped out onto the porch just as a third shot rang out. Closer this time. Birds erupted from the treetops, their panicked cries filling the air. "This way," Connor said, leading them toward the sound. His movements were swift but careful, and Lily followed as closely as she could while holding Emma. They hadn't gone far when they heard voices, men's voices, laughing and calling to each other. Connor held up a hand, signaling Lily to stop, then crept forward through the undergrowth. After a moment, he beckoned her to join him, Through a screen of leaves, they could see 3 men in hunting gear. 2 of them were dragging something large across the ground, leaving a dark trail on the forest floor. The third man walked ahead, a rifle slung casually over his shoulder. "Got the mama," one of the men said, grinning. "Pelt'll fetch a good price." "What about the cubs?" another asked. "Spotted 2 of them running off. They won't last long without her. Maybe we'll get lucky and find them too." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. She knew, without having to see more clearly, who they had killed. Connor's face had turned to stone, his knuckles white where they gripped his rifle. For a terrifying moment, Lily thought he might load it and confront the men. Instead, he turned to her and whispered, "Get back to the cabin. Call the game warden. These men are on private property with illegal kills." "What are you going to do?" Lily whispered back. "Make sure they don't get those cubs." Before she could protest, Emma let out a sudden wail. The sound cut through the forest like a knife. The poachers froze. Then the one in front raised his rifle, pointing it toward the source of the cry. "Who's there?" he called out. "Show yourself." Connor stepped out of the underbrush, his empty rifle pointed at the ground. "You're trespassing," he said calmly. "This is private property." The men exchanged glances. "Didn't see any signs?" one of them said defensively. "There's a fence line half a mile back," Connor replied, "and signs every 100 feet. You crossed it deliberately." The man with the raised rifle narrowed his eyes. "We're just passing through. Got a problem with that, old man?" Lily hugged Emma closer, trying to quiet her as she watched the confrontation unfold. Her fingers itched to reach for her phone, to call for help, but she didn't dare move. "That bear you killed," Connor said, nodding toward the carcass. "Tag on her?" The men shifted uncomfortably. "Don't need tags on private property," one muttered. "You need the owner's permission," Connor countered, "and you don't have it." The leader took a step toward Connor, his rifle still raised. "And who are you? The owner?" "A friend," Connor replied evenly. "One who doesn't take kindly to poachers." The tension in the air was palpable. Lily could see the leader's finger hovering near the trigger of his rifle, while Connor stood his ground, seemingly unafraid despite being outnumbered and outgunned. A sudden rustle in the underbrush behind the poachers made everyone turn. 2 small, dark shapes darted between the trees. The bear cubs, returning to their mother despite the danger. "There they are," one of the men exclaimed, swinging his rifle toward them. "No!" Connor shouted, lunging forward. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The leader, startled by Connor's movement, fired his rifle. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space of the forest. Connor staggered, clutching his side, but kept moving forward, crashing into the man and sending them both to the ground. Lily couldn't help it. She screamed. Emma began to wail again, her cries mingling with the panicked shouts of the men and the frightened whimpers of the bear cubs. The 2 other poachers, seeing their leader wrestle with Connor, dropped the bear carcass and rushed to help. In the confusion, no one noticed as the cubs crept closer to their fallen mother, nosing at her still form with soft whines. Lily knew she should run, should get Emma to safety, but she couldn't leave Connor. Without thinking, she grabbed a fallen branch and stepped out of hiding. "Stop!" she yelled. "The game warden is on his way." It was a lie, but the men didn't know that. They hesitated, looking from her to the struggling pair on the ground. "I've already called," Lily continued, her voice steadier than she felt. "You've got about 5 minutes to clear out before they get here with the sheriff." The leader shoved Connor away and scrambled to his feet, his face twisted with rage. Blood stained Connor's shirt where the bullet had grazed his side. "This isn't over," the man spat, but Lily could see the uncertainty in his eyes. 3 minutes now, she said coldly, and I've got your faces on camera. Another lie, but it worked. The men exchanged glances, then turned and fled, crashing through the underbrush without bothering to take the bear carcass with them. As soon as they were gone, Lily rushed to Connor's side, Emma still clutched in one arm. "You're hurt," she said, kneeling beside him. Connor grimaced, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "Just a graze. I've had worse." Lily helped him sit up, then froze as she saw movement beyond him. The bear cubs had emerged from hiding and were creeping toward them, their dark eyes filled with confusion and fear. "Connor," she whispered. "Look." He turned his head slowly, his expression softening at the sight of the orphaned cubs. They were smaller than Lily had realized, probably born earlier that year. Their mother's massive form lay just beyond them, dark blood matting her fur. "Poor things," Connor murmured. "Won't last long on their own." The cubs seemed to sense they were being discussed. One of them, the bolder of the two, took a hesitant step toward Connor and Lily, its nose twitching as it caught their scent. Emma, who had calmed somewhat, caught sight of the cub and let out a delighted squeal, reaching toward it with grabby hands. "She remembers," Lily said in wonder. The cub froze at the sound, then, to their amazement, continued its cautious approach. It seemed drawn to Emma, perhaps recognizing her as the strange, hairless cub it had encountered before. Connor watched with an unreadable expression. "What will happen to them?" Lily asked softly. "Game warden would take them to a rehab center," Connor replied. "If they survive that long." The second cub had joined its sibling now, both of them just a few feet away from the humans. They were clearly terrified, but driven by some need greater than fear, perhaps simple curiosity, or the desperate hope that these strange creatures might help them now that their mother was gone. Lily looked at Connor, seeing the pain in his eyes that had nothing to do with his physical wound. She recognized it all too well. The helpless rage against a world that took loved ones without warning or reason. "We should go," Connor said at last, struggling to his feet. "I need to report this." Lily nodded, but her eyes were still on the cubs. "And them?" Connor hesitated, looking from the orphaned cubs to Emma, who was still reaching toward them with innocent longing. "I know someone," he said finally. "Wildlife rehabilitator about an hour from here. Specializes in bears." Relief flooded through Lily. "You think she'd take them?" "He," Connor corrected. "And yes, Jacob would take them. If we can catch them." Lily looked at the cubs, who were watching them with wary eyes. "How do we do that?" Connor considered the problem. "Need to earn their trust somehow." Emma squirmed in Lily's arms, clearly wanting to get down. Against her better judgment, Lily set her daughter on the ground, keeping a firm hand on her tiny shirt. The effect was immediate. The bolder cub took another step forward, drawn by the smaller human. Emma sat happily in the dirt, babbling at the cub as if they were old friends. "Well, I'll be damned," Connor muttered. Slowly, carefully, the cub crept closer until it was within arm's reach of Emma. The baby girl reached out a pudgy hand, and to Lily's astonishment the cub allowed her to touch its head. "She's the key," Connor said quietly. "They trust her, don't know why, but they do." "Because she's innocent," Lily replied, watching as the second cub joined its sibling. "She doesn't know to be afraid, and they sense that." Connor nodded slowly. "Jacob's got transport cages at his place. I could bring them back here if you'll help me with the little one." Lily met his eyes. "I'll help, but first we need to take care of that wound." Back at the cabin, Lily cleaned and bandaged Connor's side while he called both the game warden and his friend Jacob. Emma sat nearby, playing with her wooden toys, occasionally looking up as if expecting to see her new friends appear. "Jacob's coming tomorrow morning," Connor reported, hanging up the phone. "Says the cubs have a good chance, being young as they are. Warden's sending out a patrol to look for those poachers. Cubs raised in rehab centers don't get too familiar with humans. They'll still be wild when they're released." Lily wasn't entirely convinced, but the thought of maintaining some connection with the cubs was appealing. They had, in their own way, brought something unexpected into her life. A friendship with Connor. A reminder of the resilience of life in the face of tragedy. "What will happen to them when they're grown?" she asked. "They'll be released back into the wild," Connor replied. "Somewhere far from hunters, hopefully." Emma suddenly squealed, drawing their attention back to the window. The cubs had approached the cabin and were now sitting directly beneath the window, looking up as if waiting for something. "I think they want to see Emma," Lily said in amazement. Connor scratched his beard thoughtfully. It's not unheard of. Animals can form bonds, especially young ones. Before Lily could respond, the sound of a vehicle approaching made them all turn. Through the trees, they could see a battered pickup truck making its way along the narrow dirt road. "That'll be Jacob," Connor said, moving toward the door. "Should be interesting." The cubs, startled by the noise, retreated to the edge of the porch, but didn't flee into the forest. They watched warily as the truck came to a stop and a tall, lanky man with a bushy beard climbed out. "Connor, you old dog," the man called cheerfully. "When you said bear cubs, I thought you were pulling my leg." Connor stepped out onto the porch, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Morning, Jacob. As you can see, it wasn't a joke." Jacob whistled low as he spotted the cubs. "Well, I'll be. They're just sitting there like they're waiting for a bus." Lily appeared in the doorway behind Connor, Emma in her arms. The baby immediately began squirming and pointing at the cubs. "This is Lily and her daughter Emma," Connor introduced them. "They've got a special relationship with these cubs." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "Special how?" As if in answer, Emma let out a happy gurgle, and the cubs' ears perked up. They looked toward her with unmistakable recognition. Jacob stared in disbelief. "That's not normal bear behavior." "Nothing's been normal since these two met," Connor said, nodding toward Emma and the cubs. "You should have seen them with the mother bear." While Connor explained the extraordinary events of the past weeks, Lily watched the cubs. They seemed torn between fear of the newcomer and their strange attachment to Emma. The conflict was written in every line of their small bodies. The instinct to flee warring with the desire to stay close to the human child who had somehow earned their trust. It was a feeling Lily understood all too well. After Michael's death, she had been caught in a similar conflict. The urge to retreat from the world, fighting against the need for human connection. Only her love for Emma had kept her from giving in to grief entirely. "Well," Jacob said when Connor had finished his tale, "that's quite a story. Question is, what do we do now?" Connor glanced at Lily. "We thought you could take them to your rehab center. Get them ready for release when they're older." Jacob stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Normally, that'd be the plan. But these cubs have imprinted on humans, on your little girl specifically. That complicates things." "What does that mean?" Lily asked, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. "Means they might not adapt well to the wild," Jacob explained. "Might seek out human contact, which could be dangerous for them and for people." The implication hung in the air. Cubs that couldn't be released would spend their lives in captivity. in a zoo or wildlife sanctuary if they were lucky, or worse, be euthanized if no suitable home could be found. Emma, oblivious to the adult's concern, continued to babble happily at the cubs, who had crept closer once more, drawn by her voice. "What if—" Lily began, then hesitated, unsure if her idea was crazy or inspired. "What if they stayed here?" Both men looked at her in surprise. "Here?" Jacob repeated. "You mean at your cabin?" Lily nodded slowly, the idea taking shape as she spoke. "Not inside, of course, but on the property. We have 20 acres, most of it forested. They'd have room to roam, to be bears, but they'd also be protected." Connor frowned. "It's not that simple, Lily. They're wild animals, not pets." "I know that," she insisted. "I'm not talking about domesticating them, just providing a safe place, a sanctuary." Jacob looked thoughtful. "It's unorthodox, but not unheard of. There are private wildlife sanctuaries. Would need proper permits, of course, and expertise." "Which I don't have," Lily admitted. "But I do," Connor said quietly. Lily turned to him in surprise. Connor cleared his throat, looking slightly embarrassed. "Before I was a hunter, I worked with game management," he explained. "Spent 5 years at a bear research facility in Montana. Know more about black bears than most." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "You never mentioned that." Connor shrugged. "Never came up." Hope bloomed in Lily's chest. "So you could help? If we decided to do this?" "It would be a commitment," Connor warned. "Years, not months. These cubs will grow into adult bears. They'll need space, food, medical care sometimes." "I understand," Lily said firmly. "But after what happened with their mother, after what they've been through, I feel responsible." Jacob scratched his beard again. "Well, I can help with the permits, got connections at Fish and Wildlife, and I could provide guidance, supplies when needed." "I'd be here," Connor said, meeting Lily's eyes, "if you want." The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond the cubs. Lily felt her heart skip a beat at the intensity in Connor's gaze. "I'd like that," she said softly. Emma squealed again, bringing their attention back to the present. The bolder cub had crept to the bottom of the porch steps and was looking up at her with unmistakable longing. "Looks like it's decided then," Jacob said with a chuckle. "These cubs know where they want to be." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Jacob helped Connor and Lily secure the necessary permits to establish a small wildlife sanctuary on her property. They built a spacious enclosure in the woods, not to contain the cubs permanently, but to provide a safe space where they could be fed and monitored while they adjusted to their new home. Connor spent more time at the cabin than his own place, arriving early each morning and often staying late into the evening. He showed Lily how to prepare the special formula the cubs needed, taught her to recognize signs of illness or distress, helped her understand their behaviors and needs. They named the cubs, Willow for the female, who was smaller and more cautious, and Oak for her brother, the bolder of the two. The names had been Emma's choice in a way. She had been playing with wooden blocks painted with trees when the cubs first entered their enclosure, and the names had seemed fitting. "They're growing fast," Lily remarked one evening as they watched the cubs romp in their enclosure. Emma sat on Connor's lap, clapping her hands in delight at the cubs' antics. Connor nodded. "They're doing well, better than I expected, honestly." "Because of you," Lily said, touching his arm gently. "Your knowledge has been invaluable." Connor looked down at her hand on his arm, his expression unreadable. "Been good for me too," he admitted, having a purpose again. Over the weeks, Lily had noticed subtle changes in him, a softening of his hardened exterior, moments of unexpected tenderness, especially with Emma. The baby had taken to him completely, reaching for him whenever he appeared, falling asleep against his chest during their evening discussions. "She likes you," Lily had remarked once, watching Emma doze in Connor's arms. "Feelings mutual," he'd replied gruffly, but the gentle way he cradled the child belied his tone. Now, as the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the clearing, Lily felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced since before Michael's death. It wasn't the same, would never be the same, but it was good in its own way. "Connor," she said suddenly, "why did you really give up hunting?" He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the cubs. "Seeing your little girl with that mother bear," he said finally, "it changed something, made me see things differently." "What things?" "Life, death, the choices we make." He glanced down at Emma, who had fallen asleep against his chest. "Been taking life for 20 years. Maybe it's time to try protecting it instead." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. Before she could respond, a twig snapped in the forest beyond the enclosure. Both of them tensed, memories of the poachers still fresh in their minds. "Stay here," Connor said quietly, handing the sleeping Emma to Lily. He moved silently toward the sound, years of hunting having taught him to move through the forest without betraying his presence. Lily held her breath, clutching Emma close. Connor disappeared into the trees. Moments stretched into minutes. The cubs, sensing the tension, stopped playing and huddled together in their shelter. Finally, Connor emerged from the forest, but he wasn't alone. A man followed behind him, not one of the poachers but a stranger in a crisp uniform with a badge glinting on his chest. "Lily," Connor called. "This is Ranger Bennett. He's from the National Park Service." Jacob Bennett was a tall, lean man with kind eyes and a serious expression. He nodded politely to Lily as Connor introduced them. "Miss Morgan," he said, "I apologize for the unannounced visit. We received reports of a unusual situation here. I needed to see for myself." Lily felt a flicker of alarm. "Reports? From who?" "Anonymous tip," Bennett replied. "Someone claiming there were captive bears being kept illegally." Lily's heart sank. The poachers. It had to be. Revenge for the confrontation in the woods. "We have permits," she said quickly. "This is a licensed wildlife sanctuary. The cubs were orphaned. Their mother was killed by poachers." Bennett held up a hand. "I've seen your paperwork, Miss Morgan. Connor showed me. Everything appears to be in order." Relief washed over her. "Then why are you here?" The ranger's expression softened as he looked at the cubs, who were watching the humans curiously from their shelter. Curiosity, mainly. It's an unusual setup. Private citizens rarely have the expertise to properly care for wild animals, especially predators like bears. "That's why I'm here," Connor interjected. "I worked in bear research for years before." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Before becoming a hunter," Bennett finished for him. "Yes, Connor told me it's an unusual transition in both directions." There was something in the ranger's tone that set Lily on edge. Not hostility, exactly, but a careful neutrality that suggested he was reserving judgment. "The cubs are healthy," Lily said defensively. "They're thriving, and they've imprinted on humans, especially my daughter. They wouldn't survive in the wild." Bennett studied her face. "May I see them?" "Up close?" Connor and Lily exchanged glances. "Of course," Connor said, "but they're shy around strangers." They approached the enclosure slowly, Emma still asleep in Lily's arms. The cubs retreated further into their shelter, watching warily. "They seem well cared for," Bennett admitted, observing the clean enclosure, fresh water, and ample food. But they're wild animals, Miss Morgan. Even with imprinting, they'll grow into powerful predators with instincts you can't control. We know the risks, Connor replied. We're preparing for them. The enclosure will be expanded as they grow, with minimal human contact except for necessary care. Bennett nodded, but Lily could see he remained unconvinced. And your daughter? He asked, nodding toward the sleeping Emma. What happens when she wants to play with full-grown bears that could kill her with one swipe? The blunt question hit Lily like a physical blow. She'll be taught boundaries, she said, her voice not as steady as she'd hoped. She'll understand they're not pets. Will she? Bennett's kind eyes held genuine concern. Children her age don't rationalize like adults. They don't understand danger. Connor stepped between them, his posture protective. We're working on a long-term plan, he said firmly. Jacob Wells, he runs the Wildlife Rehab Center, he's advising us. These cubs will have a good life here and Emma will be safe. Bennett held Connor's gaze for a long moment, then nodded. I hope you're right. He looked back at the cubs, who had crept slightly closer, curiosity overcoming their wariness. They are beautiful animals. As if on cue, Emma stirred in Lily's arms, her eyes blinking open. She looked around sleepily, then spotted the cubs and let out a delighted squeal, reaching toward them. The effect on the cubs was immediate. They bounded forward, pressing against the mesh of the enclosure, making soft whining sounds in response to Emma's calls. Bennett watched in astonishment. That's remarkable, he admitted. She was there when their mother was killed, Lily explained. She crawled right up to them, touched them. There's a bond between them. I've never seen anything like it, Bennett said, his professional reserve cracking slightly. It's almost as if they see her as a sibling. Connor nodded. That's why they're here. They chose to be here. After their mother was killed, they found their way to the cabin, to Emma. Bennett was quiet for a long time, watching as Emma babbled happily to the cubs, who responded with soft grunts and playful movements. I'll need to file a report, he said finally, and there will be periodic inspections. If at any point I believe the situation has become unsafe, for the bears or for your family, I'll have to intervene. We understand, Lily said, relief flooding through her. Bennett handed her his card. Call me if you need assistance, anytime, day or night. After the ranger had gone, Lily collapsed onto the bench by the enclosure. Emma still in her arms. The stress of the encounter had left her drained. He could have taken them, she said quietly. Connor sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. But he didn't. He saw what we see. Emma wriggled out of Lily's grasp and toddled toward the enclosure, pressing her tiny hands against the mesh. Oak, the bolder cub, mirrored her action, placing his paw against the barrier where her hand rested. What if he's right? Lily whispered, watching the interaction with a mixture of wonder and worry. What happens when they grow, when they're not cubs anymore? Connor's weathered face was solemn. We'll face that when it comes, one day at a time. But the ranger's warning had planted a seed of doubt that wouldn't be easily uprooted. As the weeks passed and summer gave way to fall, Lily found herself watching the cubs with new eyes, not just seeing them as they were, but as they would become. They were growing rapidly, their playful antics taking on a new power as their muscles developed and their teeth sharpened. One crisp October morning, Lily stood at the kitchen window, washing dishes and watching Emma play in the yard under Connor's watchful eye. The cubs had been released from their enclosure for supervised exercise, part of their training to respect boundaries while still having freedom to explore. The scene before her was so domestic, so peaceful that for a moment Lily could almost forget the unusual nature of their arrangement. Connor sat on a stump, whittling a piece of wood, occasionally glancing up to check on Emma. The little girl was building a tower of leaves, laughing each time the wind scattered her creation. The cubs explored nearby, occasionally bringing pine cones or interesting sticks to drop at Emma's feet like offerings. Lily smiled, feeling the familiar warmth that had been growing in her heart these past months. She had come to rely on Connor's steady presence, his quiet strength, his gentle way with Emma. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, sharing meals, caring for the cubs, working together to build a safe and nurturing environment for both the animals and Emma. Sometimes, in quiet moments like this, Lily found herself wondering what Michael would think of their unusual family. Would he approve of the cubs? Of Connor? The questions had no answers, but they no longer brought the sharp pain they once had. Instead, there was a gentle melancholy, a respectful remembrance that could exist alongside new joy. The peaceful scene outside was suddenly disrupted by the sound of a vehicle approaching. Lily tensed, setting down the dish she'd been washing and moving toward the door. Unexpected visitors were rare and, after the encounter with the poachers, unwelcome. Connor was already on his feet, positioning himself between Emma and the driveway. The cubs, sensing the tension, retreated to the edge of the forest, watching warily. A sleek black SUV pulled into view, its polished surface out of place in the rustic setting. The driver's door opened, and a woman emerged. Tall, elegantly dressed, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She surveyed the cabin with a critical eye before her gaze landed on Connor and Emma. Lily stepped out onto the porch, an inexplicable knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. "Can I help you?" she called. The woman turned, her expression unreadable behind expensive sunglasses. "Lily Morgan?" she asked, her voice cultured and confident. "Yes," Lily confirmed, moving to stand beside Connor. "Who's asking?" The woman removed her sunglasses, revealing sharp features and calculating eyes. "Savannah Reed. I'm a producer with Wildlife Network. We're interested in your unique situation here." Lily exchanged a glance with Connor, whose face had hardened into a mask of suspicion. "I don't understand," she said carefully. Savannah smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Bear cubs being raised by a human child? It's an extraordinary story, exactly the kind of content our viewers love. "How did you hear about us?" Connor demanded. "News travels," Savannah replied vaguely. "Especially unusual news. A ranger filing reports about orphaned cubs bonding with a toddler. That gets attention." Emma, oblivious to the tension, toddled over to Connor and tugged at his pant leg. He lifted her automatically, his protective stance unmistakable. "We're not interested in attention," Lily said firmly. "The cubs need stability and minimal human contact, not cameras and crews." Savannah's smile tightened. "I understand your concerns, but this could be a remarkable opportunity, educational, inspirational even." She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a sleek business card. "We're prepared to offer significant compensation for exclusive rights to document your story." The word compensation hung in the air. Lily was acutely aware of the financial strain the cubs had placed on her limited resources. Connor had been helping, contributing food and materials from his own savings, but caring for growing bears was expensive. The sanctuary needed expansion as the cubs grew, requiring materials and labor they could barely afford. "Not interested," Connor growled before Lily could respond. Savannah raised an eyebrow, her gaze shifting between them. "Perhaps you should take some time to consider. The funds could help with—" Her eyes swept over the modest cabin, the makeshift sanctuary. Improvements, better enclosures, professional care. We provide excellent care, Lily said, stung by the implication. Of course, Savannah backtracked smoothly. But winter's coming. Cubs need special provisions in cold weather, and as they grow. She let the sentence hang, the implication clear. Despite her instinctive distrust, Lily found herself wavering. The money would help ensure the Cubs had everything they needed. And perhaps it would be good for people to see their story, to understand the bond between Emma and the Cubs. I'll think about it, she said finally, ignoring Connor's sharp look. Savannah smiled triumphantly. Wonderful. I'll leave you my card. Call me when you've decided. She glanced toward the forest edge, where the Cubs were still watching cautiously. They're beautiful, truly special. Your daughter is a lucky girl. As the producer turned to go, one of the Cubs, Willow, the more cautious female, suddenly darted forward, curious despite her usual wariness. She approached the stranger, nose twitching as she caught an unfamiliar scent. Savannah froze, her composure cracking for the first time. Is it safe?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "She's just curious," Connor said, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. "Wouldn't hurt a fly." As if to prove his point, Willow sat down a few feet from Savannah and tilted her head, studying the newcomer with intelligent eyes. Savannah let out a nervous laugh. "Well, they certainly are, comfortable around humans." "Just the ones they know," Connor replied pointedly. With a tight smile, Savannah retreated to her SUV, casting one last glance at the Cubs. "Think about my offer," she called, before sliding into the driver's seat. "Opportunities like this don't come along often." They watched in silence as she drove away, dust settling in her wake. Only when the sound of the engine had faded completely did Lily turn to Connor. "Don't say it," she warned. "Say what?" he asked, his expression grim. "That turning your life, and Emma's, into some reality show circus is a terrible idea." "It wouldn't be like that," Lily argued, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "It could be educational, and the money would help with the sanctuary." Connor set Emma down gently and turned to face Lily fully. "You really think they care about the Cubs? About what's best for them?" He shook his head. "They care about ratings, about drama. What happens when the Cubs do something too bear-like for their liking, when they don't perform on cue?" "We'd have control," Lily insisted, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Connor sighed, his anger deflating. "Lily, these past months have been good, better than I've had in a long time. But bringing cameras in, turning this into a spectacle." He looked around at the peaceful clearing, at Emma playing nearby, at the Cubs who had cautiously returned to their activities. It would change everything. Before Lily could respond, Emma let out a sudden cry. They both turned to see her standing by the forest edge, pointing excitedly into the trees. Following her gaze, Lily gasped. There, half hidden in the shadows, stood a large black bear. For a heart-stopping moment, no one moved. Connor slowly reached for Emma, his movements careful and deliberate. But the little girl, fearless as always, took a step toward the bear, babbling excitedly. "Emma, no!" Lily cried, rushing forward. The bear shifted, moving into a patch of sunlight, and Lily saw that it was favoring one paw, the right front paw. Recognition struck her like lightning. "Connor," she whispered. "It's her, the mother. She's alive." Connor froze, his eyes widening as he took in the bear's familiar form, the distinctive white patch on her chest, the healed but still visible scar on her right paw where the trap had caught her. "Impossible," he murmured. "She was dead? We saw her?" Yet the evidence stood before them, watching with dark, intelligent eyes. The cubs had gone completely still, their noses twitching as they caught a scent they had never forgotten. Oak was the first to move, taking a hesitant step toward the bear, then another. Willow followed, her movements equally cautious. The mother bear watched them approach, making no sound, no movement. "How?" Lily whispered, clutching Connor's arm. "The poachers must have wounded her but not killed her," Connor replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Bears are incredibly resilient. If the bullet missed vital organs, she's been alive all this time, searching for them. Looks that way." Emma squirmed in Connor's grasp, clearly wanting to follow the cubs. He held her firmly, though his eyes never left the remarkable reunion unfolding before them. The cubs had reached their mother now, sniffing her cautiously, recognition dawning in their eyes. The mother bear lowered her head, gently nuzzling each cub in turn. The sounds they made, soft whimpers and low growls, spoke of a connection that transcended human understanding. Tears streamed down Lily's face as she watched. "They remember her," she whispered. "They're her cubs," Connor replied simply. "That bond doesn't break." The mother bear finally moved, turning to lead her cubs into the forest. They followed without hesitation, their movements synchronized, a family restored against all odds. "Wait," Lily called out, though she knew the bear couldn't understand. "Wait, please." Surprisingly, the mother bear paused, looking back at the humans with an unreadable expression. Emma called out too, a stream of babble directed at the departing cubs. For a moment, the two worlds hung in perfect balance, the wild and the tame, nature and nurture, freedom and sanctuary. Then Oak, the bolder cub, suddenly broke away from his mother and sister and bounded back toward Emma. He stopped a few feet away, sitting back on his haunches as if uncertain. Emma struggled harder in Connor's arms, reaching toward her friend. With a reluctant sigh, Connor set her down but stayed close, his body tense with readiness. The little girl toddled toward Oak without fear, her chubby hands outstretched. The cub remained still, allowing her to approach, to touch his fur one last time. Lily held her breath, watching as her daughter said goodbye in her own wordless way. The mother bear waited patiently at the forest edge, making no move to call her cub back, as if she understood the importance of this final moment. When Emma finally stepped back, Oak returned to his mother and sister. With one last look at the humans who had cared for her cubs, the mother bear turned and disappeared into the forest, her children following close behind. Silence descended on the clearing, broken only by Emma's soft sniffles. Lily went to her daughter, gathering her into her arms, feeling the small body tremble with emotions too complex for her young mind to process. "They're gone," Connor said quietly, coming to stand beside them. "Back where they belong." Lily nodded, unable to speak through the lump in her throat. Joy and sorrow mingled in her heart. Joy for the cubs, reunited with their mother against all odds, and sorrow for their absence, the strange empty space they would leave behind. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked finally. "Letting them go?" Connor's hand came to rest gently on her shoulder. "They were never ours to keep, Lily. Wild things need to be wild." That evening, the cabin felt emptier than it had in months. Emma was subdued, looking frequently toward the door as if expecting the cubs to appear. Lily moved through her familiar routines mechanically, her mind still replaying the miraculous scene in the forest. Connor stayed for dinner, as he had almost every night since the cubs came into their lives. But there was a new tension between them, an unspoken question hanging in the air. What now? After Emma was finally asleep, exhausted from the emotional day, Lily joined Connor on the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds. In the distance, an owl called, its haunting cry echoing through the trees. "Will they be all right?" Lily asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "The cubs, I mean. They've been with us so long. They'll remember what their mother teaches them," Connor replied. "Bears are smart, adaptable, and they have her to guide them." Lily nodded, taking comfort in his certainty. "And what about us?" Connor turned to look at her, his expression questioning. "What happens now?" Lily clarified. "Without the cubs." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You think I'll leave? Now that they're gone?" Lily looked away, suddenly embarrassed by her transparency. "You came to help with the cubs. Now they don't need help anymore." Connor was quiet for so long that Lily was sure she had her answer. But when he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, almost tender. "I didn't stay for the cubs, Lily, not for a long time now." She turned to him, hope and fear warring in her heart. "Then why?" In answer, Connor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, his calloused hand cupped her cheek with surprising gentleness. "Because for the first time in 20 years, he said softly, "I found something that made me want to live again. Not just exist. Live." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "Connor, you and Emma," he continued, his voice rough with emotion. "You brought me back from a dark place, made me remember what it feels like to care, to hope." Lily covered his hand with her own, leaning into his touch. "I was so lost after Michael died," she whispered. "Coming here, I thought I was running away, but instead—" "You found a new beginning," Connor finished. She nodded, unable to put into words the complexity of what she felt, the grief for Michael that would always be part of her, the unexpected joy Connor and the cubs had brought into her life, the fear and exhilaration of opening her heart again. Connor seemed to understand without her having to explain. With a gentle confidence, he drew her closer, his arms encircling her in a protective embrace that felt like coming home. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised against her hair. "Not unless you want me to." Lily shook her head, clutching the front of his shirt. "Stay," she whispered. "Please stay." They remained on the porch for a long time, holding each other under the star-filled sky, two broken souls finding healing in each other's arms. The forest around them hummed with night sounds, the distant howl of wolves, the rustle of creatures in the underbrush, the whisper of wind through pine needles. And somewhere in those dark woods, a mother bear led her cubs through familiar paths, teaching them the ways of the wild, the lessons of survival. But in their young hearts, they carried something rare and precious. The memory of human kindness, of a small girl's fearless love. Two worlds momentarily intertwined, now separate once more, yet forever changed by the encounter. Winter came early that year, blanketing the forest in pristine white. The cabin, with its smoking chimney and frost-edged windows, stood like a warm sanctuary against the cold. Inside, life had found a new rhythm, a new harmony. Connor had moved in gradually, first bringing clothes, then tools, then the few mementos he'd kept from his previous life. His cabin, deeper in the woods, stood empty now, a chapter closed. Emma, now talking in short sentences, had adjusted to the cub's absence with the resilience of childhood. She still looked for them sometimes, pointing to the forest edge and saying, "Bear! Bear!" But the sharp pain of loss had faded, replaced by new wonders, new discoveries. Lily watched her daughter and Connor building a snowman in the yard, their laughter creating puffs of white in the cold air. Emma wore the tiny snowsuit Connor had brought home last week, her red curls peeking out from under a knitted cap. Connor lifted her up to place a carrot nose on the snowman's face, his movements careful and loving. The sight filled Lily's heart with quiet joy. They had created something beautiful here. Not just a home, but a family. Different from what she had imagined for herself, but no less precious for its unexpectedness. The phone rang, pulling her attention away from the window. It was probably Jacob, checking in as he did every few weeks. He had been disappointed when the cubs left with their mother, but understood the rightness of it. Nature had its own wisdom, he'd said, its own way of healing wounds and restoring balance. But it wasn't Jacob's voice that greeted her when she answered. It was Savannah Reed, the producer who had visited months ago. "Mrs. Morgan," the cultured voice said, "I hope you remember me.